Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk, and I'm John, and today we're here to actually talk about one of my top 10 favorite films of all time, Blade Runner. And we're also here to talk about its 4K that is celebrating its 5-year anniversary. And also the film itself is celebrating 40 years since it came out, if you can believe that. But before we dive into all that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, tech and game reviews, nothing helps out the channel more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So Blade Runner was originally released in June of 1982. It came out the same month as The Thing, E.T., Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So if you're a sci-fi fan and you were alive in 1982, unfortunately I wasn't, you were eating good at the theaters in 1982 because, my God, can you imagine every weekend you got to go see E.T.? And also Poltergeist came out that month too. I just don't know what was going on in 1982, but we got some great movies in June of 1982. It's amazing what happened that month. I wish I was alive in 1982 and I went to the theater one weekend and saw The Thing, and then the next weekend I went into the theater and saw Blade Runner. I would think movies are just going to become the greatest thing ever. We're getting some of the best movies ever made. I don't even know where movies can go. Now, it did taper off through the 80s and, obviously nowadays. But Blade Runner is still one of the greatest films of all time, even for all the cuts it's received since its original release. So Blade Runner is directed by Ridley Scott. It stars Harrison Ford, Sean Young, and Rutger Hauer. And it's based on the Philip K. Dick novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And this is definitely my favorite Ridley Scott movie. Even though I love Alien, Blade Runner it takes Alien and just takes it to the next level. And one of the biggest things I love about Alien is that set design. I mean, that ship is incredible. It feels lived in. It feels like a real ship, what you imagine a ship in the future would be like. You got your regular soldiers on there, just trying to do a job. And like the world they live in, it's a real world that he created. And Blade Runner, again, he takes that to the next level. It takes place in Los Angeles in 2019. In a world that has created replicants. Basically, they've created slaves. They only get a short lifespan. They're really expected just to do regular work, even though the Tyrell Corporation puts a lot of time into putting memories in them and making them feel like real human beings. And that's really the point of this movie, is like, what makes a human being? Is it its consciousness? Is it living? Or is it just being born? Is that what makes a human being, is being born? And that's what this movie is asking you. It's a very philosophical movie, which many sci-fi movies are. And I believe in 1982, the reason why this movie bombed is because a lot of people were expecting an action sci-fi movie. This movie only came out 5 years after the original Star Wars, 2 years after Empire Strikes Back. It has Harrison Ford, who is also at this time Indiana Jones and Han Solo, and he's playing Rick Deckard in this. And many people were expecting another Harrison Ford action-packed sci-fi movie like they're used to seeing him in, or another serial just like an Indiana Jones. But unfortunately for a lot of those people, what they got was a very slowed down sci-fi movie that is really dealing with regular world issues and dealing with life and humanity in general. And for me, that works perfectly. I love movies that make you think. I love movies that challenge you. I love movies that are going to actually make you put the work in, and it doesn't just hand you everything on a plate just so you could eat it up. Even though this movie gives you some of the most stunning visuals you'll ever see in your life. When that spinner first goes up and they're early in the movie, I mean, I can't believe it. Even the opening scene when we're going in on the Tyrell Corporation's building and we got the fire going on, and these are just miniatures that they shot, and these are some of the best use of miniatures in my opinion in film history. I really do think that helps carry this movie along, because the world they created, you're just so invested in it. You get, when you're watching this on the biggest screen you could possibly watch it on, and it looks gorgeous. You really get wrapped up in the world. It almost transports you off your couch or wherever you happen to be watching it into this world, and you really feel like you're living in 2019 Los Angeles, which now in 2022 is 3 years ago. So I think they missed the mark on what Los Angeles would be, and flying cars in general, because that just didn't happen. We really thought it was gonna, but it really didn't. I really was anticipating that at some point in my lifetime. I mean, it still might. So Harrison Ford is a Blade Runner, which means he's hunting down replicants, and he's got to get a specific 4 replicants. One of them, Rutger Hauer's character of Roy Batty. He's the leader of these replicants, and these replicants are much stronger than regular human beings. So they got to get the best. They got to get Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford is going to hunt these guys down one by one. And they really do develop all these characters, these replicants, and show why they're doing what they're doing. And Rutger Hauer, this is one of the best villains ever portrayed on screen, because you really understand where he's coming from. Is he the villain of this movie? It's really hard to say. You created a person, gave him memories. He feels like a real human being. And all he wants to do is live. And he's going to find his father, Tyrell, just to help him live longer. That's all he wants, which is really a basic human thing. We all want to live longer, don't we? We all feel like we're on borrowed time. I mean, these people even have less time than a regular human being has to live. And all they want to do is live. That's it. That's the only goal here, is for them to live. They want to just live longer. Tyrell has this great line where it's like, the brighter the flame, the shorter the stick, and it's so true. Like, you make the most out of your life. It might not be a shorter life, but was it worth it? Is it worth just living a regular, boring life where you just get up and do the same thing every day? Or is it better to actually make good use out of your life? And that's what he's trying to explain to Rutger Hauer's character. But Roy Batty is having a hard time understanding that, because he wants to live longer. He knows his expiration date is coming, and he's got to figure this out. And that's what leads up to one of the greatest endings, where Harrison Ford and him are on that roof, and he's just explaining it, and he's slamming his head through the walls, and it's just a great third act. And then it leads up to, because we're talking about the final cut of this movie, because there's many different cuts of this. The original cut of this movie actually had Harrison Ford doing voiceover narration for it, which he did not want to do, and if you listen to the narration, you can clearly tell he didn't want to do it. And Ridley Scott didn't want to do it, but unfortunately the studio didn't feel like many people were going to understand this movie, and they really felt like it was necessary. Thankfully, the final cut removed that. I believe the cut before this also removed that. And it actually ends now with Harrison Ford finding the unicorn origami left by Edward James Olmos' character. And once he sees that, he turns around, heads with Sean Young in the elevator, door shuts, hard cut into the credits, which I love that hard cut into the credits right as the score picks up. Now, the original movie had actually B-roll footage from The Shining, because Warner Brothers did that they actually used to show Harrison Ford and Sean Young driving into the sunset, because we needed that happy ending. We needed to put a bow on it. Luckily, now we don't have that ending. It's the ending that I prefer, which is him grabbing that origami, which also I think illustrates to me Harrison Ford is a replicant. How else would they know that he was dreaming of that unicorn earlier in the film? But, you know, they kind of skate away from that with the sequel. We'll talk about that sequel another day, what my thoughts are. But for me in this movie, I think there's enough evidence supporting the fact that I think Harrison Ford is a replicant. And I think that's why he has the strength to compete with these guys. And I think that's why he's sent out there to take these people down, because he has the strength, he has the mindset. And I think that's what they based Ryan Gosling's character off of in Blade Runner 2049, is the fact that only a replicant can take down another replicant. But overall, I love Blade Runner. It's one of my favorite films of all time. If you haven't checked this one out, I can highly recommend it. I think you're going to be very, very happy that you did. Just be warned, it's not an action movie. It's got some action scenes in it, but this is very much a slowed down. The pacing is a little bit slower. It's more of a sci-fi movie. It has one of the greatest scores of all time to really help drive this along. For me, I listen to the score at least once a month. It's beautiful. It's something that is just very special to me, and I really think it's one of the greatest scores ever put on film. And I really do think that overall, this is a 10 out of 10, 5-star film, one of the greatest films of all time. It's a masterpiece. So if you haven't checked out Blade Runner, please do. And we're also here today to talk about its 4K Blu-ray that came out in 2017. So I'm going to be talking about the Warner Brothers 35th Anniversary Edition 4K that was released in 2017. Now, there is a new studio out that actually, it's called the Film Vault, and it was #1. It just came out this month, that it's a special edition 4K Blu-ray set. I believe it was $120. They released 4 of them. I think one of them was The Godfather, another one of them was Scarface. And I really wanted to grab it. It had a limited run of only 3,000 of them, but the price was just a little too high, especially since I already own the disc, and it's the same exact set that would be in there. It's just, you know, you don't get that beautiful design, and I really do wish I would have had it. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you, oh, you know, I'm really happy with my regular slip cover and everything like that, when that's just sitting around just looking all gorgeous and beautiful. I got my eye on her. Maybe one day they'll re-release it and I'll grab it when I have a little more dough lying around, but I really did want to grab that. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. But anyway, as far as the discs go, this is a 4-disc set. You get your 4K in there. Again, it's the final cut. You know, you get your nice little regular standard slip cover. You pop it open, you get that. In here, like I said, is a 4-disc set, and it does the thing that I absolutely hate most, where they layer the discs on top of each other. Now, that's not really a huge deal, and the reason is because Blu-ray discs and 4K discs in general are really hard to scratch, so you don't really have to worry about that. I just prefer if they would have put it in a nice collector's set, but this is a Warner Brothers release, so I don't expect them to put it into a collector's set. This is pretty much what I would have expected Warner Brothers to do. I wish they would have done something along the lines of what Apocalypse Now did, because that's also a studio release, but unfortunately we didn't get that. But this thing is jam-packed with extras, and it includes actually my favorite film documentary of all time, which is called Dangerous Days, The Making of Blade Runner. I've watched this a few times, and it just really dives into every single aspect of this. The actors, the sets, Ridley Scott himself, the score, everything. If you're a fan of Blade Runner, you have to watch this documentary. I can't sell it short. It's amazing. It's my personal favorite making of documentary ever. It's right up there with Heart of Darkness from Apocalypse Now. So I really do think that you should check that out. You know, you get a Blu-ray version of the film on here, also the final cut, and you get plenty of more extras. For a studio release, especially like Warner Brothers, to get this many extras on a disc, they really knocked it out of the park as far as extras go. It's right in line with most Criterion releases as far as extras, which is really surprised for a studio release. Most studio releases will only give you like the trailer, a couple interviews, maybe a commentary track if you're lucky. This has 3 commentary tracks on it, so there is so much on this. It's loaded with extras. And now the disc itself, the 4K Blu-ray, what did I think of it? Now this only has HDR10 on it because it's 2017. So it didn't have Dolby Vision at the time. A lot of 2017 4Ks didn't have Dolby Vision. Actually, Bram Stoker's Dracula threw some Dolby Vision on that. And I would have really appreciated if they would have gone back and kind of touched up with some Dolby Vision, because as good looking as this 4K is, and it is the definitive version of Blade Runner, it's never looked better than it does on this disc. There is some skin tone issues in certain scenes that I felt like it didn't look that lifelike, and more specifically early in the movie when they first get the Blade Runner, when the guy's like, I need the Blade Runner, I'm drawing a blank on the actor's name, but him and Harrison Ford's skin tone in this abandoned train station, they look just a little bit off. And then even later when they're at the Tyrell Corporation, the skin tones it looked a little unnatural. It could be the lighting on the set, but all the lighting on the set looks gorgeous. That's the stuff that really just pops off your screen. It's so vivid. And, you know, all the miniatures in this just really looked amazing. Really, that's where the HDR really shined. The blacks were deep. The colors really were vivid and dynamic, and they just looked gorgeous, and they pop off your screen like you can only imagine they could, because this is one of the best looking movies of all time. But I did have some skin tone issues throughout the film, mainly mainly when they're using interiors, when they're on sets. I felt like the skin tones didn't completely work for me, and I think that Dolby Vision would have really touched that up. So as far as the visuals go, I mean, it's still good. It's still great. It's just, you know what, it's a 5-year-old 4K now. It would have been nice if they, for its 40th anniversary, if they would have just threw some Dolby Vision on there and touched it up. I really do think that would have made just a difference to push this over that 4 stars into the 5-star area. But we also get a Dolby Atmos track. And now this Dolby Atmos track is still a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 Atmos track. Like I said, it's one of my favorite scores, if not my favorite score of all time. And it really does it does so much work. It has a great use of the subwoofer, a really good bass. Anytime the spinner is going up and down, you feel it in your house, your walls are shaking. You know, great use of the front channels, like the audio comes in crisp and clear. You never have to touch your remote. You pick it up, you set it at the beginning of the movie, what you want your levels at, and you can put it down. It's fine throughout the entire thing. All the sound effects, special effects, never overwhelm the dialogue. You never have to have that issue where all the special effects, all the background noise is higher than the dialogue channels, like most Christopher Nolan movies seem to have this issue doing. So you can just put the remote down and you can enjoy a movie with a great Dolby Atmos track that you will not be disappointed with. So overall, I do think that Blade Runner is one of the greatest films of all time, and I think that this 4K is still worth the price that they're charging for, which I believe is $27 right now. Now, it does go on sale sometimes where you'll see it drop down to about 20 bucks, and I think that's the lowest I've ever seen it. Maybe a couple years ago on Black Friday, it might have been lower than that, but for a 4-disc set, the definitive edition of Blade Runner, it's still worth it at that price, even 5 years later. Would I like some Dolby Vision to touch this up? Absolutely. That's the one little flaw I could find in this, is that I think the visuals do need a little bit of a touch-up. We got to get in there, get some touch-up paint on that, and then she'll be beautiful, ready for the road again. She's seaworthy one more time. But you know what? We don't got that, but it's still a great 4K that I grab every single year to watch, and I am so happy that I own it, because I do own the previous Blu-ray version of this as well, because I just love Blade Runner. I've seen this on pretty much every single release. I think it was released on Laserdisc and VHS back in the day, I'm sure, but I didn't have it then. But since it was on DVD when I was old enough to actually watch this, I've owned it, and it never looks better than it does on this 4K Blu-ray. So overall, I still, even 5 years later, would give Blade Runner's 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray a solid 9 out of 10. Definitely worth your time. But we're also here today on Friday to talk about this week's digital code giveaway. So let's dive right into that. So if you're new to the channel, we do this every single Friday. I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below, and then you are entered into our digital code giveaway. You come to Monday's video, whatever that video might be, I will put your name on a magic wheel that's going to be on this screen right behind me. We're going to spin that wheel twice, and the 2 names that it lands on, those are this week's 2 winners, and they'll have their choice of the digital codes that you saw on your screen before you today. But what are this week's 2 questions? Well, you know what? We're only 2 days away from Christmas. I believe Hanukkah is going on. So in honor of the holidays, what is your favorite holiday movie? It doesn't have to be Christmas. It doesn't even have to be Hanukkah. It could be Halloween. It could be Thanksgiving. It could be Valentine's Day. Whatever it is, what is your favorite holiday movie of all time? And then for people who maybe don't like the holidays, maybe the holidays make them depressed. I mean, I get that. You know, the holidays can be a little overwhelming for people. You know, money's a real thing, and unfortunately, there's never enough of it. So if you're not a fan of the holidays and you just want to answer a regular question about what your favorite movies are, what's your favorite sci-fi movie of all time? For me, it's obviously The Terminator, but Blade Runner's right behind that because I'm just a huge sci-fi guy. So what is your favorite sci-fi movie of all time? Now just remember, guys, you only got to answer one of those questions. You don't got to answer both. I'm not going to stop you if you do, but whatever question you want to answer, make sure you leave that in the comment section, and then we'll see you on Monday where we're going to spin that wheel. And just remember, guys, nothing helps out the channel more than by you liking this video, subscribing to the channel, throwing on a Christmas hat, and telling all your friends.